Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I think, Arinda, you asked me like what has been my background. So I did schooling, most of my schooling in Rajasthan, and grew up in that state, moving at different places. Uh, Studied at some very remote areas as well. Like I spent a lot of time in a small village in Jaisalmer because my father had was posted there because of government service. After that, I went to IIT Kanpur. I had the option to choose some engineering field, but like everybody else, I mean, I was very excited about physics and pure science. Then from there, I moved to University of Waterloo and particularly to Perimeter Institute because Rob Myers was recruiting some students there. Had an amazing time. Uh, I think, I mean, that's what you're asking for. What else you want to know? Because I got distracted.
Sorry, yeah. No, no, that's roughly about it. And then so you did your undergraduate from IIT Kanpur, as
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit about what you did in your PhD? Not, yeah.
Yeah. So at my PhD, basically, I had the pleasure to work with different, on different types of problems. So definitely entanglement entropy was holographic entanglement and entropy was one of the areas, but I got to work on critical points. And I also got a chance to work on quark gluon plasma on one of the projects with you. So there was a variety of projects I had an opportunity to work on, but obviously everything was under the umbrella of ADS-CFT correspondence. Yeah.
Very good. So, when did you realize that you wanted to use your skills elsewhere?
Okay. Yeah. So I think sometimes towards the end of the PhD or in the second half of the PhD, I begin to feel that I do not have enough patience to see the impact of my work and wait for a long time to see the impact of my work. And that's when I started thinking I need to move into a direction where things move much faster. And that's when I started exploring other areas. Rob was very supportive. He did point out some academic directions which he suggested I may explore. And then I got interested in a field called econophysics, where basically physics is applied to economics. And that's how my interest grew in finance. And I ended up eventually joining a hedge fund here in Toronto.
Very good, thank you. So in India, there is a general trend to keep doing what you do. So, for example, if you did an undergraduate degree in physics, you try to do a master's in physics and then do a PhD in physics, and continue doing what you're trained in. What kind of mindset does one need to do something entirely different?
Okay. Uh, it's a very good point. First of all, in my opinion, these days, if so, there are certain fields where you can still continue to work in the same area and you can grow, but there are many more opportunities for interdisciplinary uh, op, uh, work, I would say. And the most important skill that as a PhD or physics PhD, one acquires is like, there are very strong quantitative skills, very strong technical skills. And the most important skill is ability to learn. So most of the areas, so particularly like, PhD and quantitative field give a lot of confidence to me that I can go into any diverse problem where I may not have trained for over a longer period. I can go there, identify a smaller piece, learn about it very quickly, and start making some impact. And that is a type of mindset one needs to have. You do not need to learn the whole background. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. But once you have identified some interesting problem, collaborate with other people and just work on it.
Very good, thank you. So, can you briefly tell us about what additional skills you try to acquire to move into the different area?
Yeah. So when I was at Perimeter, basically, I realized I need programming skills. technical skills are extremely important. And when I say technical skills, using the latest technology, like nobody uses Fortran these days. So right programming, right tools, for example, databases are used these days. In old days, like, we used to park the data in, specific type of files. That is not the convention anymore. So I uh, worked on the projects which required programming skills. I collaborated with Louis Lerner there on one of the projects. And that helped me train a little bit on the programming. And then obviously there are some exercises or things I will do on my own. I learned about finance. I learned about programming in different languages, whether it was C++ or R. And then I worked on another project in quantitative finance, on which I later wrote a paper during my postdoc. There I went and collaborated with a professor at University of Waterloo in econometrics department. So the idea is learn new skills, collaborate with the people. They can help you guide in the right direction, and then just, try to do some interesting work.
Very good. Thank you. How long did this take, and how did you go about applying for jobs?
Okay. It takes a while. Uh, I would say it easily takes 6 to 12 months to acquire a new skill. And this pattern hasn't stopped yet. So for example, when I was working as a quantitative analyst at this hedge fund, and when I left the hedge fund and started FAIROM, which was a startup, FAIROM's application was in blockchain technology. I spent good amount of time learning cryptography, and we created, we filed a patent around zero knowledge proof. Even in that duration, I spent several months learning about cryptography so that we could apply these new tools to the kind of technology we were trying to develop. So it takes easily 6 to 12 months to acquire a new skill. And when it comes to the job, once you have acquired those skills, I'm sure the first job is the hardest. It takes a lot of time, particularly when you are trying to find the right job. You may get rejected a lot of time, but the idea is, you keep trying it. It's a statistical game. You try harder, someone will be there who needs your skill. So don't worry too much about, if it is the right job or not. Just get into it, get some experience, and then move on to the next thing.
Okay, thanks very much, Ajay. And then finally, this is the last of at least my list of questions. Were you confident that this was the right move?
That's a very interesting question. So I would say you can never be 100% confident looking it forward. Only when you have moved and look backward, that's when you feel like, did you make the right choice or not? Uh, Even after joining this hedge fund, there were times when I had thought, like, should I go back to academia or should I change the direction? But one view that was hardened is that, and this is something I have learned over the period, is it is not a sprint, and it's not like a final destination when someone moves into a different direction. It is just one step towards uh, towards your destination. That's how I view it. So even after my first job, I switched the direction again. So instead of staying in finance, I switched to technology. And I think, my third job, I'm doing even slightly different thing.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ajay. So what we will do now is we will let Ajay make his presentation, and after that, we will open the floor for questions, and anybody can raise their hands and ask questions about either the talk that he's going to give or anything that you have in mind. So Ajay, up to you.
Okay, thank you, Arinda. Let me share my screen. So first of all, I think, it is so hard to do these things remotely, right? It becomes almost like a monologue, which I hate. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So once again, thanks everybody. Thank you, Aninda, for inviting, and thanks everyone for having me. So Aninda, when we talked, basically, Aninda wanted me to talk about my career after a PhD in physics, but then I realized that there are other ideas, other things I have learned over the period, which I use as a guiding principle to navigate through the type of work I want to do or in my career. So I thought I will share those ideas with everyone, and I hope it can be relevant or interesting for you. Uh, Basically, I'm going to talk about how do we figure out the problems to work on. Uh, and full disclosure, these are not precise data-driven decisions. There are a lot of conjectures here. So, and so take it like, you will have your time to learn and experience these things. So this is what I'm going to talk about. So first I'll discuss very high level. There are macro trends and cycles in play in our civilization, and I'll focus on technology cycles that take place. And then I'll talk about why these technology cycles are effectively fertile grounds to do some amazing high impact work, and why it is important to find the right problems to work on. Then I'll talk about what type of superpowers most likely the people here in this talk have that they can leverage, and how mentors may be able to help. By the way, please feel free to stop me to ask questions. Again, I hate this idea. I cannot see everyone and cannot interact effectively. So I'll pause in between if you have any questions. So at a very high level, basically civilizations develop through macro trends and cycles. And these trends and cycles exist in almost every field around us. They exist in science, technology, finance, economics, politics. And these trends and cycles operate at different time scales. So for example, there are things which take place generally at 2 to 3 year time scale. There are debt cycles in capital market that people postulate that takes place on 10 to 20 years. And then the rise of world powers and decline, that is also cyclical, and it takes place on a time scale of, let's say, 50 to 200 years. Okay. Now, I'm going to particularly focus on the cycles or trends that take place in technology.
Ajay, can I suggest that you stop sharing and start sharing again, because I think there is, by mistake, somebody has scratched over this. I mean, the Zoom has
Okay,
this problem.
sure. Let me do that. Okay, can you see
Yes.
it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to focus on technology cycles, and why this type of cycles are important, because these technology cycles trigger the most economic activities. Uh, they are the most fertile opportunities, some of the most fertile opportunities to do very highly impactful work for wealth creations. And also, they are the areas where, through the products, we make impact on a large number of people's life. Okay, and generally these cycles start with a new innovation or some novel idea. And once this innovation has taken place, these days people are very aware of these cycles, so they think about, or they postulate about, thousands of applications of these new ideas, and there is immediately an inflated expectations from this new technology or new idea. In the early stage, there is a very high uncertainty because we still do not know if these new novel ideas will make an economic sense or not. So at this stage, there are risky investments are made. So particularly early stage venture capitalists invest in these ideas. A large number of these experiments or investments basically fail, mostly. Then there is a stage where there is a disillusionment, and people have more reasonable expectations from these new ideas or technologies. Some of the projects will succeed out of all of the experiments which are being run. And at that stage, the value has been demonstrated and proven, more traditional investors also join the ride. Large technology companies also start investing and using the technology. And at this later stage investment, then there is this cycle gets into a long tail where it takes a while for the technology or idea to mature and industry to consolidate. So basically what happens is large companies go and buy these smaller companies. Now, these technology cycles are basically, they create emerging markets. And when I say emerging market, it's not based on the GDP, but it is the type of market which get created because of these new innovations or ideas. For example, when we moved from a cell phone, like, a normal cell phone to a smartphone, there was a disruption. And thousands of hundreds of things people these days do on their cell phone or a smartphone, nobody imagined that those things were possible, and that was in some sense an emerging market. And mostly these emerging markets are underdeveloped opportunities. Now these markets or these technology hype cycle, so in this one, in this chart on the right hand side, I took this picture from Gartner's hype cycle. So in this here, you can map most of the technologies on this hype cycle. And you can see there is a peak of inflated expectations. There is a trough of disillusionment, and there is a plateau of productivity. In most of the fields you see, approximately you can map on this hype cycle. So for example, banking, very old traditional industry, you can possibly map it somewhere at the tail of the plateau of productivity. Now, these technology cycles, as I mentioned, are some of the most fertile areas, and these technology cycles trigger a lot of economic activity, wealth creation, and advancement in human life. Now, from here, we can identify these trends, but how does it link with success of a company or an individual? Now, it is very easy to identify these trends these days, but it is very hard to identify the right opportunities, okay? So I'll give you an example that why there are so many macro factors which actually influence the success of even the novel ideas or different industries or fields. So on the left-hand side, basically in October 2021, there is market cap of Tesla, a company that makes electric cars. And then there is a market cap of next or 10 largest automaker. And basically Tesla valued equal to the 10 largest automakers. On the other hand, just to give you an example, in 2021, Tesla sold approximately 900,000 vehicles, and Toyota alone sold approximately 9 million vehicles. So you can imagine a Tesla as an electric car maker is very successful, but the electric car is not the biggest innovation. We understand Elon Musk is great. Tesla is very innovative company, but on the right-hand side here in this picture, Gustav's tricycle, it was the first electric car effectively. And it was discovered in 1881. So can anybody try to or think about the reason why Tesla has been so successful now, whereas this innovation took place more than like around 140 years back? Does anybody want to try? Okay, so the biggest reason, in my opinion, for the success or the reason for success of Tesla was that people begin to realize that oil and gas-based more vehicles contribute in global warming. Global warming was not an issue hundreds of years back, and everybody was concerned about it. Even if it is not Tesla, let's imagine that it was not Tesla. I'm absolutely certain that the field was fertile, the macro environment was ready, that instead of Tesla, there would be someone else to dominate the market. So the point I'm trying to make here is the idea is, if someone wants to succeed or increase the probability of being successful, then they need to look at the macro trends. But then macro trends are good enough. There are multiple other factors which contribute in the success. And what matters and very much is being at the right place at the right time. I cannot emphasize this point, but the way I view it is not just being at right place at right time. It is about the choices we make on what problem we are going to work. And that dictates how impactful our work will be. Let me give you some more fun examples on it. So since there are physicists, we need to talk about Nobel Prizes here. So this chart shows average age of getting a Nobel Prize in physics. It's a very interesting chart. The average age has consistently increased since, let's say, 1940. The number of physicists, I think there were only 10K or 10,000 or something in the early 20th century. These days, there are 1 million physicists. So those 1 million brains are actually trying a lot of ideas, okay? But physics was possibly a very fertile field in the early 20th century. The field had advanced to a stage where it was ready for a lot of novel ideas to be discovered with limited efforts. And that's why a lot of young physicists with very small career made some very important discoveries. On the other hand, over the period, it has become extremely hard to make those breakthroughs because effectively the field is not as fertile as it was in those days. Now, just for fun, and I'm sure there could be someone here in the group who at early stage, you want to pursue greatness. So I'm going to offer another career opportunities here. So here is the Nobel Peace Prize. So you can see the average age of getting a Nobel Peace Prize has decreased consistently since 1950. I'll leave it here because it is generally quite fun and controversial. So I'll leave it for your interpretation here. Okay, now very high level, we have talked about these cycles and then the importance of finding the right problems. And then we have talked about uncertainties in these technology cycles. Now, what all of this has to do with being a physicist or a PhD or in general being at IISc, right? So the idea is that at some stage, we can try to improve the pipeline. We can try to improve the the probability of finding the right problem. But these emerging fields have very high ambiguity and uncertainty. And when you go into that type of field, what matters is how many experiments one can run and how many things or ideas one can evaluate or try. And that demands quick learners. So basically, the point I'm trying to drive is with the technical proficiency and with the problem solving skills, and the most importantly, the learning skills, so that someone can quickly learn and apply the knowledge to different type of problem. These are the type of superpowers help people succeed in these technology cycles and make and do very impactful work. It's unbelievable how many people have been very successful and how much wealth has been created in these cycles, in technology cycles, when young people who are amazing learners jump into it and go out and try to solve some problems. So if I need to think about the action items, I'll go out and pick a trend spend 6 to 12 months in acquiring these, some relevant skills, get into the field and try to solve some problems. Initially, it is going to be hard. It may be someone may get rejected from, let's say, 100 jobs or something. In a short term, there can be setbacks. It may take longer than you expect to get your first job. But I'm absolutely certain that with this type of mindset approach, in the long run, you're bound to succeed, because statistically, you have increased your probability, you have maximized your probability to be successful. Now, one of the biggest challenges when I'm seeing, or when I recruit a lot of people, and one of the challenges I face when recruiting people from academia is the change in the mindset. So a lot of time, this change in the mindset is very critical when someone is moving and coming out of academia and getting into industry. In academia, we drive the projects from curiosity, but in industry, it's all about value creation. When I say value creation, what I mean is, with minimum amount of efforts, how can we create maximum economic value? Then in academia, we are focused on perfection. On the other hand, in industry, it is all about efficiency. Have you heard about 80-20 rules? So basically, there is saying that to do the 80% of work on a project requires 20% of efforts. But to complete the rest of the 20% of work, it requires 80% of the efforts. So in academia, someone may think to drive or solve the problem to the very end, but I would focus, when I'm talking about efficiency, I would focus to complete the project to a level where it is when it is creating a lot of value. And at some point, one has to stop and move on. So in academia, it helps to have affinity with the project. On the other hand, if you are in industry, one has to see it as a set of milestones and just cross one and think about the next one. Now, if there are some professors or mentors in this call, there are a few things I want to share how they can help students succeed. So whenever I'm recruiting someone, this is the question I ask myself: how will this candidate succeed after spending 6 years with me? And I think in the academia, whenever someone is recruiting a PhD student or master students or a postdoc, I think we need to ask this question, that how this candidate will succeed after working in this field after X years. I was very fortunate to work with Rob Myers. He had a very open mind about other areas or other fields, and I could dedicate some time during my PhD to develop these other skills, which were relevant for the next step in my career. I think as a PhD supervisor or mentors, we should seriously ask the candidates somewhere in the middle of their PhDs that, hey, you need to plan for the next steps and what are the areas you want to explore, and then help them acquire those relevant skills. And the third point is, we should consider promoting industrial internships. A lot of time I have seen that people get into pure science because of love for the problem, but they need to go out and explore what other opportunities are out there. It has to be a conscious decision. And so maybe promoting industrial internship can solve that problem. Overall, I want to say that if academia is basically just one of the fields where there are a lot of interesting problems to solve, but if you approach things with an open mind, there is a much bigger opportunity set out there. And in my opinion, you guys have the skills to be extremely successful in all those areas. So I'll pause here. Thank you, and we can discuss some questions.
Thank you very much, Ajay, for a very inspiring talk. So what I'll do is, Pingal, I'll hand over the platform to you to coordinate questions from students. So you can, so whoever has questions, can you please raise your hand, and Pingal will unmute you or enable you to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. Questions, anyone?
Yeah, so people might be thinking about framing questions. So maybe let me lead the question answer session by asking you, Ajay, that you acquired a certain class of skills during your PhD, which were sort of running numerical simulations, running things
Yeah.
on Mathematica and things like that. So did these skills that you acquired help you in the long run in any specific way? So can you give us an example where you use them?
Yeah. So yes, they were helpful. They were helpful in exposing me to different types of programming or software tools or approaches, which is in play. Do people use Mathematica out there? Nobody uses Mathematica, in my opinion, in industry. Or there is a very small set of people who do in industry. But what was more important is it gave the perspective and how the programming is done. And that helped me learn the next programming skill, which let's say Fortran. And then that helped in learning the next thing, which was C++. If I had the option, I would directly jump to, let's say, the most relevant programming languages which are being used, but it is some steps there which are being taken.
Very good. Yeah. So there are more questions. So Arpita has raised her hand. Arpita, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you, Arpita.
Yes, thank you, sir, for an inspiring talk. So my question was, whenever we try to start or do something, there's, somebody who's better than us, or I always find somebody smarter than me. So it's very daunting to, think that I might be able to match up to their expectation, or I might just lose confidence in that because somebody is better than me with their set of skills and education. So if I'm starting new, how do I tackle that problem?
Okay, so it's a very abstract question, Arpita, because there is no, I do not know, what skills we are talking about and what field you are talking about. Is it research, or it is something, trying for a job and going out there? In my opinion, there is a place for everyone. It doesn't matter how smart the next guy is. I tell everyone, it is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You may fail so many times in a short run, but if you keep trying, keep learning, in the longer run, you will succeed. And as I said, it's a statistical game here. Even recruiting is a statistical thing. There are a bunch of people who are trying to find the right candidate at the right price point. On the other hand, there are candidates with specific skills who are trying to find a company that will hire them. So it is less about being exceptional there, and it is more about having a right attitude, right skills, and being at the right place at right time. So, and first entry point, in an industry, will be the hardest ever, in my opinion. But once you crack it, and it may take easily, I will not be surprised, depending on how's the the economic or labor market out there. It can easily take, I would say, 6 months to 18 months. Okay, but once you get into it, you will find, and you will be able to navigate, and you can grow much faster compared to other people. I do not know if it answers your question, but please feel free to ask if it does not help.
Thank you, sir. It certainly was helpful, but I have a follow-up question on this. So, which is, how do I handle recruiters who prefer somebody with the best education and who wants the best skills, or like a higher GPA than somebody like that? Or is it the trend that they follow? They're more open to giving chances to people?
So here's, if I'm in that situation, this is what I'll do, Arpita. I'll go work for a company, maybe a smaller company, uh, which does not care about my GPA that much. I'll just try to get into the job because the experience is very relevant. And once I've gained experience and I have learned a bit more about that field, and then I have bought time to work and acquire those new skills, then I'll go and raise my level. And everybody climbs in the steps. There are very few who can directly kind of go and get the best jobs from the beginning. But think, if you think about carefully, it's a distribution. It's not even a normal distribution. It's a long tail distribution in some sense. Few people get highly paying jobs initially, but it does not mean, by the way, that in the longer run they will be the most successful people. I have seen. So there was a time when I thought about like where or what type of work, let's say, the top rankers at IITs have done over the past, let's say, 20 years or something. And honestly, there is a correlation, but it's not like super strong. There are many other people who are not the top rankers in IITs, and they are amazingly successful.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for answering.
Soumya Mittal has a question. You can unmute yourself.
Hello, sir. I think Arpita has already asked this. So I wanted to ask, like, suppose if you are going to a new industry, then the recruiters do not know you, right? So even if you know the skills, so I think you answered the way is to first go to a smaller company, right? Because there will be at least someone who would want to recruit you. So from our side, like, what should be the strategy? Should it be like applying to as many companies as possible, and then see which company recruits us?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say yes. So first of all, I do not know if ISC has a alumni network or not. If it does have, try to leverage your connections. And then by all means, acquire those skills and try as many companies as you can. And I don't remember exactly, but honestly, for my first break, I heard like so many no's, a lot of those. In fact, Polar was one of the first companies which called me for interviews, and it worked. So just very similar situation what you are going through, that your resume was getting rejected at the entry level. Nobody was even calling you for an interview. But once someone called for the interview, go ahead and nail it down, because you have worked very hard, acquired those skills, you have prepared for interviews, you just get it done, right? So don't worry about that. That's a normal thing. In the long run, it'll give you more strength than taking away anything from you.
Ajay, can I interject and ask a follow-up question?
Thank you, sir.
So Ajay, how important was a reference from your PhD advisor in securing a job?
That's a good point. In my case, and this is what it is. References do matter, but you need to think about the mindset of the recruiter or the guy who is recruiting. So if I'm going to recruit someone, I want to spend my money and get someone who can get some work done for me. And then there is a specific project in mind. So my first cutoff will be, can this candidate do the job? Once it is done, once we are through this first cutoff, that's when it becomes irrelevant that what does the reference letter says, and what is the personality of the person? Is this a good cultural fit or something, right? So it is helpful, but I think, I mean, as a candidate, one has to make the first cut in terms of skills.
Anchal has a question. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, sir. I wanted to ask, as you mentioned that you decided at some point of time to change the area, but how did you narrow it down to the investment banking specifically?
So that's a good point. I did not narrow it down to investment banking. I basically worked in quantitative finance in broadly, and quantitative finance is not just in investment banking. Investment banking is just one side, and there is a sell side, there is buy side. Sell side has investment banking, buy side has all type of other investment companies, for example, hedge funds, etc. I think in early days, and I'll be very honest here, I was married, baby on the way. The most thing I cared about is like, I need to fix a lot of things. Where can I get like, a high paying job? That's honestly was my objective in the beginning. When I went into the field, I realized that this is not for me. In the long run, I do not see myself creating more value and not working on the most interesting and relevant and impactful problems. So I decided to get out of it. And in some sense, this industry is anyway going through consolidation. It's matured. It's not the most fertile field to be. So I decided to get out. Okay. So that's how I decided or made the choice.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions in the chat. So first one is by Akif. I will read them out. Hi, thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask what kind of skills are required to transition from physics to finance? Did you need to study any finance to get your first job?
So physics to finance, I think there are two types of skills which are required. One is the programming skills, some language, preferably C++ or Java type of language. Proficiency in that language is critical. And the second is I did study finance. I did write a paper in quantitative finance, which was published in one of the journals. But I want to point out one thing. Whenever you're thinking of getting into an industry, you need to think about how mature or what is the stage of this field. Finance used to be a lucrative field, but this has changed or evolved over the years. It is an industry which is getting consolidated, and there are very few jobs. So you can try it, and honestly, like, it's not even the highest paying jobs effectively in the industry these days, or statistically. So yes, I mean, I think I have answered your question here.
Okay, the second question is by Sai Shweta. So, can you point us to the current and upcoming avenues that are fertile for physicists with numerical skills primarily to explore?
Yep. So definitely AI, machine learning is one of the most appealing fields. Then the application of the data exists in pretty much all type of fields. So for example, clean tech, which is kind of addressing a bigger problem of, let's say, climate change somehow. There is fintech, financial technology. Fintech is different than investment banking. There are a lot of opportunities there as well. Technology, for example, companies. These days, Amazon or Facebook, Google, they hire a lot of data scientists, and that is another interesting area. Even in, for example, once you have developed some quantitative skills, fields like blockchain also has a lot of applications. And then, as I said, by being a physicist, you acquire the numerical skills, but with the numerical skills, what field you are going into. So if you are going into, let's say, thinking about blockchain, maybe you need to learn a little bit of cryptography there, which is again a propagation from the leveraging your quantitative skills and acquiring some new skills and then getting into that field. So I think I'll have to check, but there are so many of those which can get help from skills that you have.
Shankar has a question. You can unmute yourself.
Hello, sir. Sir, I'm a second year PhD student right now. And after completing the PhD, there are a couple of options like doing a postdoc, getting into academia, or joining an industry, like such. So my question is this, as of right now, is it okay to have multiple options and at the verge of completion of your PhD, see what works out and explore the different path? Or should I right now select a particular option, tailor my skills accordingly and focus only on that? What would be your suggestions?
Okay, good question. And I think you can play it both ways, depending on your interest. I strongly believe that if you are passionate about some problems or field, there is a natural drive to explore and do great work, and which can start at early stages as well. Or someone can focus on acquiring generic skills over the period, and then towards the end, they decide that, now I want to pick a specific direction. This does not happen in India very often, but you'll be surprised how many times, at least in the Western countries, people switch their field of specialization. From physics, they will go to, let's say, biophysics, and they will possibly kind of, jump from there and get into something else, let's say nanotechnology. In my opinion, and I agree with this thought that Aninda brought up, we are generally very confined in terms of directions we want to explore. So I'll leave it there because it is very personal approach there. Does it answer your question, Sankar?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Faizan, you can ask a question.
Hi, Ajay. Thank you for the nice talk. I had a question. As a PhD student, you're working with Rob Myers, who's obviously a very well-known person in the field. You were doing well, so you had a good, probably a good theoretical physics career ahead of you. So at that point, what is it that made you think that academia is probably not the right fit for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I'll tell you an interesting story. So I was writing a research proposal, and then I asked Rob, like, hey, Rob, we are doing, this work on quark-gluon plasma. I want to add line, like, what type of practical applications of the quark-gluon plasma we'll have. And Rob laughs and says, for that, we'll possibly need to wait a few thousand years. So, just hang in there. So I think one of the biggest reasons I decided that I do not want to stay in theoretical physics is because I wanted to see the impact of my work much faster. I did not have enough patience. Could I have explored other areas as well? I may have, for example, like, now looking back, I may have explored, let's say, quantum computing. But whatever options I had or I could think about, I felt like, I need to get out and explore other things. And that's the kind of, approach I took. And as I pointed out before, you do not get to the final destination with one switch. You may want to switch multiple times to end up at the right place where you want to spend your career, basically, and your life. Does it answer your question, Faizan?
Yeah, thank you. You answered it very well. I had another question, which is about after you made the shift. In your slides, you made the point that you need to change your mindset when you go to the industry. So from perfection, it has to go from curiosity, you go to creating value, and from perfection, you have to go to efficiency. And a lot of us who join research, who join physics, sort of have a preference for perfection and for curiosity a lot of the times. And it's, how hard was it for you to let go of it many times and then, get more involved in value creation?
Yeah. So that's a very good question as well, because I had a very hard time. When I switched to industry, I had this constant conflict with a lot of my team members, where my push for curiosity and efficiency kind of was against what my team wanted me to achieve. Okay, and it did took time, and that's why I brought it up, because it's a very, very important learning for me. It took me several years to get out of that mindset, but it was partially because there was no one which I kind of trusted very well to come and tell me that I need to make a change in the mindset now if I want to succeed in this direction. So that's why there is a reason I added that slide. I see some extremely talented people, but when I talk to them, I know that this talent is raw and will not be useful for many years, just because some people like me can be very stubborn in making that change in the mindset. So faster you do it, better it'll be.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you for your answer.
So Venkatesh, you can ask the question.
Ajay, thank you for a nice start. So, can you please give some solution for an experimental physics people? You don't have a much programming skill to explore something other than this academic objects.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good point. What do you do if you are an experimental physicist? In my opinion, I think, the thing stays the same, approach stays the same. You need to identify what is the adjacent field which has industrial applications, and can you start at a small niche problem, work on that possibly in a different group or something, and then spend a few years getting some experience and then make a switch in industry. So as an experimentalist, I can tell you, you also have a lot of those unique skills, and which are very critical these days, because the way this field is evolving, there was a kind of next after, let's say, at the early kind of first decade of 2000 or 21st century was a very strong focus on software. But if you think carefully now, with the discovery or with progress in quantum computing, and then there is a push for reducing the dependency on China in terms of the hardware or technology, requirements, or not exactly hardware, I would say manufacturing. I think there are multiple directions or opportunities which are growing, which are out there. It is again boils down to the same approach. It's a generic principle. Make a switch to the adjacent field where there are more applications, and then advance your career in steps.
I have one follow-up question. Is it possible to, is there any opportunity for us to become a data scientist?
So yes, of course. As a physicist, even you are experimental physicist, you have done enough mathematics, and you can by all means train yourself and become a data scientist. Absolutely. I have a friend, a good friend from IIT Kanpur. He spent 10 years at LHC experiment, and after 10 years he has joined Intel, and he's doing cryptography. So think about the switch here. You're analyzing, you're working on LHC, and then you are making a switch to kind of do cryptography at Intel. So yes, it is doable. Absolutely.
So what kind of skills we need to learn?
What type of skills you will need?
Yeah, any courses or something.
I think learn about statistics, which are like, more fundamental things, stochastic calculus, and then, machine learning algorithms. And that is the mathematical side or stack of the skills. And another stack is basically proficiency in some programming language. So in my opinion, these two skills will make you a very strong candidate for a data scientist.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Naveen,
Hi. My question is regarding like how often do you find recruiters actually going forward to recruit PhD candidates? Sorry, PhD people with a PhD. And just a follow up to that is like I've usually heard that one should not be, so sometimes people don't recruit PhD students because they're overqualified. So is this actually true? And what does that overqualification really mean? Is it because of the pay scale or say employee retention that becomes a problem, or what is it that?
So, okay. So I think, it's Tanveen. Interesting question. So I would say, so depending on the job, recruiter tries to match the skills. And sometimes when people are overqualified, it becomes hard for the team to manage that person or the candidate. And it can come in different ways, actually. So I think, I do not have a clear answer here, and I'll tell you why, because I do not clearly understand the mindset of some Indian recruiters, honestly. I felt this challenge when I was in India, that, there are possibly relatively slightly less opportunities if I just want to do, highly technical work. Then there are very limited companies which will appreciate those skills. So if you go to, let's say, Microsoft, and you try to get into Microsoft research or IBM research, you will not be judged on any of those things. But if you're talking about the small companies, there may be those type of biases in place. But in the end, they are just trying to do their job and try to find the candidate with possibly lower skills, with lower pay scale, to get the job done. And even like, when sometimes people are overqualified, they worry about the management of the people as well. I do not know, Tarveen, if I have answered your question properly, but it is quite broad.
Excuse me, sir. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Sir, you said that finance has become a mature field and it's at the stage of consolidation. So I'm currently doing my master's in aerospace, and after my BTech, it became a trend wherein people started looking into stock markets and other things. So what would you suggest for people who are interested in finance to explore the field as such?
Okay, so if you really want to go in finance, I'm saying, like, it is so someone gave this very good analogy to me at some point, that we are more like a dot on a balloon, and as we kind of inflate it, the balloon grows, the dot grows. So your growth in any field is very much like that. If you are in an industry which is growing, you can grow, but it does not mean that the balloon has disappeared. So yes, there are opportunities in finance. It's just that it's not the balloon which is growing. What type of opportunities you can explore? I think, there is a lot of activity around trading in crypto. There is a lot of activity in stock markets as well. People have made it, or new technology companies have made it very easy for people to trade stocks. So I think, if you want to get into finance, then basically there are traditional paths, which is stocks, options, or trading futures, and those trading companies, some proprietary trading firm or hedge funds or investment banks. And then there are a lot of emerging companies as well, which are working on trading around crypto. So crypto is also something, in my opinion, which is going to grow, and it is going to be a very fertile field for next 10 to 20 years.
So thank you, sir. I have one more question. There is this thing called as Chartered Financial Analyst, CFA. A lot of my friends started doing that level 1, level 2. I just wanted to ask, how is the, I mean, do companies recognize this certification, or will it be helpful if I work into it? What kind of roles can I expect after doing that?
Okay, so CFAs had a lot of value a while back. So I do not know, Aditya, if you are doing, let's say, masters or PhD in aerospace, but
No, sir, masters.
Masters. Okay, so in my opinion, and I can be wrong, with your programming skills and quantitative skills, and a little bit of knowledge of finance, which you can acquire by reading 1 or 2 books, you will have more important skills than a CFA, because CFA used to be a very important certification, a very relevant certification for industry, but it is now very crowded. Like, people do CFA and then they get into, let's say, marketing for investment firms. So you can imagine, like, that it is not confined to the technical field anymore. So a lot of people who have CFAs, and they do all type of jobs.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, okay, so there is this follow-up question by Sai Shweta, and we'll make this our last question. So, will postdoc experience in an allied area like quantitative finance leverage or application in industry like fintech?
I think yes, it does. So, for example, if you are doing quantitative finance in any area, then there are fintech companies who work on, let's say, fraud detection, or they want to investigate transactions and drive certain type of insights to develop new products. Then yes, they do use your experience in quantitative finance.
Great. Thanks a lot, Ajay. I think all of us should be very thankful to Ajay for taking out time from his very busy schedule. So he probably will run off to work immediately. And it was a pleasure to have you. And hopefully, the next time you're in India, you should come and visit us and interact with some of the students directly. So thank you very much for your time and your valuable advice, and also for patiently answering so many questions. So hope to see you soon in one way or the other.
Yeah, thank you, Aninda, and thanks everyone. Good luck with everyone's endeavors. Okay.
Bye-bye.